Today, we're looking into a side of China that's often well missed. We're drawing heavily from Alex Joske's book, Spies and Lies, How China's Greatest Covert Operations Fooled the World. It's quite the read. Let's start with this image Joske paints. There's this man, Lin, described as slightly built with his face fixed in a disarming smile, speaking shaky English, and he's just full of optimism, talking about China's reforms, peace with the U.S., this perfect future where their kids grow up in harmony. It sounds almost, well, too nice, doesn't it?
It really does. Very comforting picture. But that's exactly where Joske starts peeling back the layers.
Right, because that image, it kind of shatters when you look at the reality Joske uncovers. This whole deep dive today is about those hidden, really quite sophisticated influence operations run by China's Ministry of State Security, the MSS.
Yeah, the MSS. And it's a part of their intelligence work that, as the book argues pretty forcefully, has been hugely overlooked, misunderstood even.
So our mission for you listening is to unpack how these ops actually work, why they've been so darn effective, and why understanding them is crucial for grasping China's role in the world, past, present, and future. And ultimately, what it means for you. Okay, this Lin guy, this friendly face, it's not just random charm, is it? It feels like a perfect starting point for seeing how the MSS embeds itself, right from the get-go.
Exactly. What's really fascinating here, and what Spies and Lies drives home, is that this kind of disarming persona, Lin's smile, his hopeful words, it's not accidental. It's a deliberate tactic. It's a key part of these MSS influence operations. And they're often mistaken for just regular diplomacy or maybe UFWD stuff. But we're talking about something much more covert, a really sophisticated long-term game.
A long game.
Yeah. And that's where Joske's research really challenges the standard view of what intelligence work is. For ages, counterintelligence, when looking at China, mostly focused on, let's call them the conventional things, right? Stealing trade secrets, grabbing tech, cyber attacks.
The stuff that makes headlines, often because, frankly, they made basic mistakes. Like Joske mentions unsecured phone lines leading to exposures. It's almost comical in a way.
But Joske argues that the real heavy-hitting, the most potent part of the CCP's intelligence work has been these influence operations. And they've been, as he puts it, the most overlooked, misunderstood, and ignored.
And if you connect that to the bigger picture, it shows this major blind spot, not just for the public, but inside intelligence agencies themselves. For a long time, they downplayed this stuff, saw it as maybe less important than catching spies red-handed.
Or they lumped it in with the United Front Work Department, the UFWD. And the UFWD does do influence work, targeting student groups, Chinese communities abroad, that sort of thing. But Joske's point, and it's a critical one, is that most of the CCP's high-level influence operations are orchestrated by intelligence officers, MSS officers.
So it's coming from the actual spy agency, not just the party propaganda arm. That makes it way more insidious, harder to spot.
Precisely. So while Western agencies were busy looking for spies with blueprints, the MSS was playing this quieter, deeper game, shaping how people think, influencing policy from the inside out, often right under everyone's noses.
It's about controlling the narrative, not just stealing the secrets. And a really stunning example of this, going way back, is the Soros China Fund story from the 80s. George Soros, right? Huge name in finance, philanthropy. He had this really bold vision for people-to-people exchanges, trying to foster an open society in China as it was starting to reform.
Huge budget, lots of autonomy. He was even funding sensitive research, stuff challenging the official line on the Cultural Revolution. He thought he was promoting openness.
And this is where it just gets wild. Soros, this global titan, was basically played. His whole project, meant to open China up, it became a Trojan horse. Joske reveals Soros's Chinese co-chair, this guy, Yuan. He was actually a high-ranking official in the External Security Police, a top MSS guy, operating undercover.
And the partner organization, CICEC, the China International Culture Exchange Center, Joske says it was MSS through and through. You basically talked Soros into handing over control, saying he'd protect the fund.
Protect it, wow. But the real mission, according to Spies and Lies, was to lay the groundwork for influence operations that shaped the world. Unbelievable.
It really makes you ask, how did that happen? How did someone like Soros miss it? It just shows the MSS's confidence, even back then, their ability to learn and adapt. And this Yuan Guang, whose real name was Yu Fang, he wasn't just some mid-level guy. He was an MSS vice minister running major overseas ops. Infiltrating the Soros fund wasn't just a success. It was like a masterclass for them. It shaped their playbook for decades.
So that CICC, the Cultural Exchange Front, that wasn't a one-off.
No, not at all. Joske explains it was the PRC's first major intelligence front group in the reform era. That stated goal, building China's cultural influence. It was, as he puts it, a convenient and disarming way to place agents beside foreign targets and give spies chances to travel abroad.
Culture as cover. And you see it popping up with some really famous people, it turns out. Like the book mentions Ying Rucheng, famous actor, vice minister of culture, revealed after his death as a 30-year MSS informant. His wife worked for the MSS too.
It's layers upon layers. And then there's the musical diplomacy aspect, the
Mm.
MSS's Social Investigation Bureau, the SIB. Their unit for this kind of cultural work, they arrange tours for Western artists.
Sir George Michael's famous 1985 China tour.
Yep. Joske details how his banquet was hosted by a CICC branch run by Guangdong State Security, a senior spy sitting right there. So you think it's just culture, just business. But it's this whole constructed facade. Intelligence officers using culture to make friends, as the book says.
Wow. Using culture to make friends and contacts and gather intel and build influence networks.
Exactly. The SIB was key. They just plugged themselves into existing United Front networks, set up these front groups. Guys like Mao Guowa, this veteran spy with an insane number of covers, operated through these channels. He was even mining journalists way back during Nixon's 72 visit.
So intelligence officers were embedded in these seemingly normal interactions right from the start. It wasn't just passive observation.
No, it was active groundwork. Building relationships, creating the infrastructure for future influence pushes.
Which brings us to maybe one of the most jaw-dropping cases in the book, Katrina Leung, codename Parlor Maid, an FBI informant for decades, making millions, 1.7 million from the FBI, plus more from business deals. But she was also an MSS double agent the entire time.
A double agent feeding the FBI disinformation using her actual Chinese intelligence links. It's audacious, and it really exposes some serious blind spots in Western intelligence.
How did they miss it for so long?
Joske argues the FBI just knew little about China's quest for technology back then. And crucially, they failed to grasp the significance of the MSS's entanglement with United Front work. Understand the landscape. Plus, there was evidence, but it got ignored because too much had been invested in the pair, meaning Leung and her handler. It's bureaucratic inertia, sunk cost fallacy.
And then there's that anecdote, the Monterey Park incident.
So yeah, where an MSS officer, she and this guy, Peter Chow, with Katrina Leung, literally stole the stone tablet celebrating its sister city link with Taipei. Just brazen.
It's almost comical if it weren't so serious.
You really showed the FBI was out of their depth, as Joske says. Different culture, different language, different way of operating. It allowed this cesspool of corrupted cases to just sit there. If you don't get your adversary's playbook, you miss the big plays.
It's like something out of a spy thriller, that whole Parlor Maid thing. But it's real, and it shows how badly outmaneuvered Western agencies could be. It wasn't just one rogue agent, it was systemic failure. So the MSS wasn't just playing in the background with culture and philanthropy. They were learning, getting bolder, and aiming higher right at policy, which leads us to Chinagate in '96.
Right? The scandal involving Chinese military intelligence funneling illegal campaign donations in the U.S. A pretty blatant attempt to buy influence in the White House, as the book notes.
But the MSS, being perhaps more subtle, learned from that, didn't they? Joske introduces this MSS officer, Gao Yichen.
Yeah, Gao. His advice after Chinagate was basically, don't just aim for the president. Broaden the target. Go after the entire D.C. Beltway foreign policy establishment. His idea was to shape and cultivate this whole ecosystem with a broader, more patient, and more deliberate campaign. And importantly, try to operate within the allowed boundaries of the law. Be smarter, quieter.
And that strategic shift seems directly linked to one of China's most successful narratives, the whole peaceful rise idea.
Absolutely. That narrative was launched very strategically by Zheng Bijian, a top party thinker, at the Boao Forum, promising this peaceful and groundbreaking path to development. It sounded great to Western ears, right? Like a major policy shift. But Spies and Lies shows the MSS pulling the strings behind the curtain.
How so?
Zheng's think tank, the China Reform Forum, or CRF. It started looking like it was about economics, but Joske shows it became a tool for advanced political influence operations, targeting the thinkers and institutions that shape foreign policy around the world. It even got backing from the Central Party School, showing the top leadership trusted the MSS with this.
The key takeaway, peaceful rise wasn't just an idea. It was a carefully managed product, marketed globally by intelligence officers.
And the proof is pretty stark, thanks to WikiLeaks, right? The book details how those leaked cables showed U.S. diplomats thinking they were getting inside scoops on Chinese politics.
Yeah, they thought they were cultivating sources within the CRF. People like Deng Kusang, Sui Fukang, Cao Huan. But these guys were all undercover senior officials of the MSS. So the diplomats were the ones being cultivated.
Pretty much. The MSS officers fed them chicken feed. Small, believable bits of info to build trust, while subtly pushing Beijing's lines. So that whole peaceful rise narrative, it wasn't necessarily organic, it was crafted, deployed by intelligence officers to shape your view of China and ultimately policy itself.
It's chilling. And the MSS didn't just target diplomats or think tanks. Joske's book details some really disturbing tactics against individuals, even students. There's the case of Barry, a grad student. MSS officers from that same China Reform Forum tried all sorts of things. Sexual entrapment, a fake confession setup, weird cash reimbursements.
Yeah.
Trying to compromise him.
It shows they target potential influencers early. Then there's Christine Fang. The book talks about how she built relationships with politicians in California, like Eric Swalwell, when they were just starting out at the lowest rung.
What was the goal there?
Personal intelligence on up-and-coming politicians. Why? To study, compromise, and influence those who are on the path towards greater things. It's that long game again, investing early for future leverage.
And it goes right to the top. Former leaders, too, like Bob Hawke, the former Australian PM. Big believer in ties with China.
Yeah, the party courted him heavily after Tiananmen. He ended up doing business with MSS-linked groups like CSMA and lent his name and credibility to things like the Boao Forum. Hawke genuinely felt he was influencing China, Joske writes. But the reality, he was effectively selling China to the rest of the world, helping craft that image of a modernizing, liberalizing China that Beijing wanted.
He thought he was the influencer, but he was being influenced, or at least utilized.
Precisely. It highlights the power of the MSS brokering access to party leaders. It's a huge draw.
Like with John L. Thornton. Former Goldman Sachs guy, headed Brookings, became this key intermediary between U.S. and Chinese leaders.
Another case where someone, likely unwittingly, fell into the sights of an MSS influence operation. He was carrying messages between the White House and Zhang Yanhai, advised Trump on Xi, acted as a back channel for Biden.
Thinking he had unique access, unique influence?
When, from the MSS perspective, he might have been seen as a valuable channel to manage, and even respected institutions, like the Berggruen Institute, hosting these Understanding China conferences.
Giving attendees rare audiences with Xi Jinping and other top leaders.
Yeah, basically helping them understand China on the party's terms, which could nudge attendees towards softer positions.
So the message from the book is stark. Whether you're a student, a politician starting out, a former world leader, a business titan, an academic, the MSS potentially sees you as a target for influence. They'll use anything, access ego, money, vulnerability. Okay, now for something that feels like it comes out of left field, but it's in the book. Spiritual influence. The MSS getting involved with, like, temples.
It is pretty surprising, isn't it? But yeah, Spies and Lies details the Shanghai State Security Bureau, the SSSB, funding and essentially running this huge Buddhist temple complex, Nanshan Guanyin, using Buddhism as a cover.
A Buddhist temple run by state security.
Effectively, yeah. The abbot, Master Yinshin, he's also a senior figure in the United Front system, and he's known for, let's say, unabashed flattery of Xi Jinping, like hand-copying his speeches.
Okay, so what's the angle?
Politics and influence, dressed up as religion. There's the Nanhai Buddhist Academy there, also MSS-backed. It's described as a base for Buddhist influence efforts designed to sign up Buddhist leaders to the CCP's strategic vision. Yinshin hosts this South China Sea Buddhism Roundtable. Joske recounts a Mongolian abbot there praising China as the leader of world Buddhism and saying point blank, all lamas in countries that believe in Buddhism support the one China policy.
So it's straight up politics using a religious platform provided by the MSS.
Exactly. It just shows how creative, how wide-ranging these operations are. It's not just government buildings and boardrooms they're targeting. It's culture, religion, anything that shapes belief and perception.
Which brings us back to that big question. With all this going on for so long, how did the West, especially intelligence agencies, miss so much of it? Joske points to some real systemic issues.
He does. A big one was the intense focus on conventional espionage, stealing military tech, defense secrets. Compared to that, these influence ops just seemed, well, insignificant to many. Harder to quantify, maybe?
And resources were an issue too, right?
Definitely. The book stresses that China work was under-resourced for years. Plus, there was often scant political will to take a hard stance, especially when economic ties were booming.
And then 9/11 happened.
Right. The war on terror massively shifted focus and resources away from China. Paradoxically, Joske notes, it even led to some cooperation between Western agencies and the MSS on counterterrorism, which probably complicated things further, blurred the lines.
There was also this thing Joske calls the access cult. What's that about?
It's this idea that scholars, policymakers, commentators became so focused on getting access to party leaders, getting those privileged insights, that they became reluctant to be too critical. They were often blind to the fact that they were taking part in an MSS influence operation because the access felt too valuable to jeopardize.
So the desire for access itself became a vulnerability.
Absolutely. And add to that internal agency issues, bureaucratic aversion, avoiding risky political cases that might cause diplomatic headaches, or as Joske puts it, piss off half the people.
And finally, just not using open source info enough, relying too much on secrets.
Yeah, overlooking publicly available clues, connections, funding, statements that could have exposed these networks much earlier if someone was putting the pieces together. Basically, Western intel was often geared up for a Cold War-style fight, while the MSS was playing a different, more pervasive game.
It's a really sobering picture, isn't it? For decades, it seems like we were focused on one threat while another, maybe more insidious one, was growing right alongside it. The MSS thrived in those blind spots.
They exploited the weaknesses, played the long game incredibly well.
But the book does end on a slightly more aware note, right? Things might be changing.
Yes, Joske suggests the MSS is facing a tougher environment now, more scrutiny, more pushback than ever before. Cases like Xu Yanjun being arrested in the U.S., governments and media being more willing to publicly expose these operations. It signals a potential shift. Awareness is growing.
So, wrapping this up, this deep dive into Spies and Lies really drives home that understanding modern China means you have to understand its intelligence operations, especially these influence campaigns. We've seen how deep it goes: philanthropy, culture, politics, even religion. It's vast, it's subtle. And the real challenge for you listening to this isn't just spotting the obvious lies or the cloak and dagger stuff. It's about learning to see the subtle manipulations, the narratives crafted to shape your perception, the way access is used, the fronts that look legitimate. It really forces you to ask, what stories, what ideas about China are you accepting? Who's telling that story and why?